Hey everyone, welcome to the Daughter Podcast Season 2. Oscar here, your local growing girl dad, bringing you the first episode of the season in which we have Joey Bowen from Fuel Hunt. In this episode, Joey and I discuss his journey as an entrepreneur, a father of two beautiful girls, and his growing influence as a leader and speaker, as well as his work with the company and community of Fuel Hunt, which is focused on growth and development through activities like jiu-jitsu and bringing back hard work. Joey introduces us to key concepts like balancing that pedestal feeling, humble service, and personal growth for himself as a father as well as his daughters, and recounts the most surprising and challenging developments in his girls' lives over the past year. Together, Joey and I explore methods of fostering continuous growth, self-awareness, gratitude, and service in both ourselves as fathers and in our daughters. The episode emphasizes the unique challenges and rewards of being a daughtered father and encourages listeners to continue to work to being strong, mindful, and present in their children's lives. I'm excited for you to listen to this episode. I hope you all enjoy it. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Daughter Podcast. Now into our second season, and to kick us off is the man, the legend, the dude, Joey Bowen, man. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. I am thrilled to be back for season 2. I mean, being a repeat guest means a lot to me. It means a lot that you asked me, but it also means a lot to me because I really support the work that you're doing. It's necessary, it's needed. You're building better dads, man, specifically girl dads, and that's something near and dear to my heart. So thank you for having me back.
Of course, man. It's an honor to have you back. It's always awesome to talk to you because I pick your brain on different things, but this is something that is also near and dear to my heart, being that I am a daughtered father. But we won't let you get started until we give you a little bit of an intro because if anybody knows Joey, the modesty is overwhelming here. All right. So, Joey Bowen, entrepreneur, speaker, right? Now getting into these big realms of being able to influence a bunch of different people live, and that's amazing. Leader, absolutely. Father of two beautiful daughters. Co-founder of the Fuel Hunt, which we'll talk a little bit about here because it is the reason, one, that we're here, and two, the reason that this whole thing keeps going. And finally, the grappler, Joey
Yeah.
Bowen. If anybody's gotten into the mats of justice, as Jocko likes to call them,
Yeah.
you learn a lot, not just martial arts, you learn life through jiu-jitsu. So we may get into some of that as we get the conversation going. But this is a short version of an introduction for you, Joey. What's been going on with you since we talked back in June of last year?
Yeah, very gracious intro. So thank you. And like you said, that's basically the past 9 years of my life. And I'm going
Right.
on 43. So you can imagine all of the other stuff that precedes Fuel Hunt. But very gracious intro. I appreciate it. Man, I've been on the hunt. I mean, no surprise since we last spoke. We're growing here, not just as a community, but also as a company, really leaning into what you alluded to, jiu-jitsu. I would spin my camera around here, but I don't want to give everybody vertigo. We recently put in about 500 square feet of mats at HQ. So this year we're looking forward to doing some grappling and growth events every month, basically an open mat, but also open minds. So if you're curious about jiu-jitsu, you can come and sit around the mats and get some of the sanity and wisdom that comes from the sweat of jiu-jitsu. You could even maybe try it. And if you're a jiu-jitsu practitioner, you can come here and you can grapple with us and grow. So that's one of the super exciting things that we have going on right now. Really making waves in the jiu-jitsu space, not just because of our clothing or our fight wear, but for the culture. I was at a military appreciation weekend 3 weeks ago that Core Medical Group put on, and a guy stopped me and he said, "Hey, I love Fuel Hunt. I love what you stand for. I love the rules of the few, but I really, really love what you're doing for the culture." And we were on the
Nice.
mats at the time about to roll. And I said, the culture as a whole, or he said, no, like jiu-jitsu culture,
Yeah.
and bringing the growth of mind to the forefront to a sport that obviously there's a lot of growth in body, but bringing the mental growth and camaraderie into the sport forefront. So, yeah, I mean that's what we've had going on over here. There's also a bunch of things that I can't talk about just yet. As you know, we've always got something cooking and in the
Of
works.
course.
But yeah, things have been going great, man. It's been, I will say, entrepreneurship is hard. It is an absolute roller coaster, as is life. Nobody really prepares you for how hard entrepreneurship will be. It's about 100 times harder than the person painted that told you it was pretty hard. It's
Yeah.
about 100 times harder than that. But we're on the hunt. We're on the hunt, and we have no quit.
Are
So.
you sure it's that hard? I mean, all these influencers on social media say, it's the way to go.
Bro, think about it, right? Like, what if I jumped on here and I said, entrepreneurship will give you everything you ever wanted. It is the absolute solution to every problem in your life. It's
Right.
pretty easy once you get the hang of it. Blah 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 blah. You'd probably buy all the shit that I wanted to sell you.
Right.
What if I got on here though and I said, you will literally bleed. You will cry at night. You will lose sleep. You will cry during the day. You will have your head in your hands. You will have your hands up. What if I told you every gory story
Yeah.
on the road to glory? Would you buy what I'm selling? No, you wouldn't.
I don't know,
So
bro.
these dudes on Instagram, they got a Lambo payment, which, $4 grand a month, you know what I mean? Something like that.
Yeah.
They got to sell their courses, so they got to make it look easy and extravagant, and it's far from that.
Right.
Far from that.
I knew that fire you up. I had to throw that in there because
No.
I was just watching something the other day. I was like, really? Like,
Yeah.
it's like a 20-year-old kid doing Lambo stuff. Anyway, it was just funny.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I mean, look, you can start a drop shipping business and you can strike gold and you
Right.
can, there's nothing wrong with having a Lambo and you can buy a Lambo and you can do your thing. But there comes a point where it ends. Life is really just seasons, right?
Yeah. Right.
Nothing aside from your belief system and your work ethic are permanent. Everything is impermanent.
Yeah.
And you don't see that on social. So the drop
Absolutely.
shipping business that did well, that bought the Lambo, it has its hard times, and typically that person just disappears when it gets that
Yeah.
hard.
Right. Right. Right.
So,
Well, you said a word that I always like. Right.
hmm
The word grappling. Yes, grappling in jiu-jitsu means getting on the mats and getting rolled up, but grappling brought to mind grappling as a father,
hmm
right? Grappling as a man trying to be the best that you can be for your daughters. And that's really why we started this entire community, right? And that's
hmm
why you feel passionate about you as a man with your daughters.
Yep.
We talked back in June about a bunch of different things. And for all you guys that have not heard that episode, that's season 1, episode 11, you can go back and catch some of those conversations with Joey. So we're expanding on these things, right? So since June, you have an 8-year-old daughter that's going on 9,
hmm
right?
Yep.
And you have a 5-year-old daughter going on 6.
hmm
So tell me how we grapple with that time. Because
Yeah.
I know you're sitting there thinking, but I remember her being like this small.
Bro, I just let me show you something. Dude, you're gonna make me cry early in the show, dude. Why? How you gonna do this? This is yesterday. I mentioned that my family's away this weekend, so I have some extra time, right? And when they're away, I do something that I would like to think most dads do. Maybe they don't, but I go through my camera roll, and this is one of the amazing things about technology. And I
Yeah.
go back to when they were little, and if you can see
Oh,
that there.
man. Yeah.
I sent that to my wife yesterday in like the middle of the day. I
Yeah.
missed them, but I went through the camera roll and I had just that thought in my mind.
Yeah.
Like, man, I remember when,
Yeah.
and they say that remember when is the lowest form of communication. They say that,
Interesting. Okay.
right? Like, when dudes get together and they say, remember when I threw that touchdown at
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
high
Yeah.
school game and I ba 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 ba. I believe that remember when is the lowest form of communication when it's in that arena.
Yeah.
But when you're looking at your true purpose in life, what really fulfills you, and you have a few moments to look in the rearview mirror
Yeah.
as to where you've been, the moments you've had, you cherish them, and then you challenge yourself to make even greater moments in the future. I
Yeah.
think remember when is one of the highest forms
I agree.
of communication. So, uh, yeah. So, sorry to take you on a little bit of a tangent there, but to back up what you were saying, I do remember when
Yeah.
they were younger, and little tykes, and now with the way the world is, man, I don't know. There must be something in the water, man. I don't even though we just drink spring water. Must be something in the water. But my oldest, going on 9, is she's a little woman, man.
Yeah. Isn't it crazy?
Oh, it's wild. It's wild.
And that question, I think, then becomes, remember when my why came in,
Yeah,
right? Remember
yeah,
when that why started,
yeah.
and that's huge, bro. Because you can. And I do the same thing, by the way. I travel a lot for work,
Yep.
and when I find myself either a long plane ride or I'm in my hotel room and TV is just not a thing. Like it's there, but it just doesn't fulfill anything, right?
Yeah,
And I'm not working out or working. I find myself doing the same thing, and I'm like,
yeah.
I don't even remember that until this very moment. That picture just triggered this thought in my head. And also, I'll do the same thing. I'll just be like, remember when we, it's just instantly. But it really is, remember when my why came in,
Yep.
right? And it's weird to say that a little bit because you're like, well, you've been with your wife. Like I've been with my wife
Hmm.
we were together for 8.5 years before we had children.
Yep.
And she's been my ride or die forever, right?
Yeah.
But then these tiny little things come in and you're like, you have a whole different why.
Changes everything. Yeah, it
Yeah.
changes everything, man. Yeah, I usually you're familiar with the voice notes and the emails that I do
Mm.
for my daughters.
Yeah.
So usually in those moments when I'm going through the camera roll and I remember, and you're like just like you, I'm kind of like, oh man, like we went to the zoo that day,
Yeah.
and sometimes I remember that I was overwhelmed
Yeah.
with the crushing anxiety of would we make it in business. And
Right.
I remember when I could have had more meaningful moments with them on that day, and I only had 2 when I could have had 20. Sometimes I remember that, and I'll create a voice note for my
Yeah.
daughters at that time. And usually it's starts with me upset, almost not getting my words out. Then I craft then I craft the message in the middle that I want to tell my daughters in the moment, and then it ends with me again, being upset, not being able to get my words out. But sometimes I'll take that action in the moment then to get it out there and reinforce really the gratitude and sometimes the lesson.
Dude, that's such a cool thing. And I know we talked about it in our last show, but it's also interesting to think through that because you're doing something for the future,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
By creating this message for your daughters. Because eventually, as you mentioned before, you're going to give them access to this inbox that has all of dad's thoughts and actions for the future. And
Hmm.
yet, it feels so present too.
Yep.
Because when you get into that process of doing it,
Hmm.
you're almost giving yourself the opportunity to think in the present and
Yeah.
realize I could have done these things, but hey, baby, know that I was thinking this. So
Yep.
explain that to me because originally when I made notes on that from our last show, I thought, well, do we get so stuck in getting future things done for our daughters? Like I'm
Hmm.
always thinking I need to help my daughter get ready for the future, whether it's like a week from now, a year from now, 18, marriage, like all these things. And I'm always thinking with a backdrop of life. Like life is
Yep.
hard. One of those philosophers said life is suffering. So explain to me like your thought process because you are doing something for the future,
Yeah.
but how does that feel presently?
So, we have rolled a few, and I think I mentioned it. I know I mentioned it before we started to get give, right? When I zoom out and I think about what I'm doing in that moment, I am giving my daughters a gift for their future. When they turn 18, they'll have access to this and they'll have a bunch of gifts in there: lessons, mistakes, voice recordings, pictures, emails to look through. They're gifts that I'm giving to them. But I'm also doing something very important in the moment. I'm giving myself a gift as well, and that's the gift of gratitude. Because I have a moment to sit there and say, I am a very, very blessed, fortunate
Mm,
human being. You know what I mean? And even if I wasn't as present as I needed to be in this moment that I'm speaking about, or I made a mistake that I want to communicate to them, I can be grateful because I have the wherewithal to do it. I'm of mind and body to do it. I'm blessed to be able to think into the future and imagine what the future will be like with my girls. Like, I'm secure enough and blessed enough to believe that I will have a future with them
Right.
and they will be there with me. So I'm giving them gifts for their future, but in the present, I'm giving myself the gift of gratitude, which makes me just a better human all around.
Right.
For my family, for Fuel Hunt, the community, and honestly for my like jujitsu too. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because if I'm going back to the grappling thing, if I'm clearer, if I'm more grateful, I'm clearer of mind. And when I'm clearer of mind, I'm better on the mats. So I look at it really as an investment. It's like that's my gratitude practice on a daily basis. I know that some people have journals. I think that's phenomenal. Some people start their day with prayer. I start my day with a devotional too. But my gratitude, my personal gratitude practice every day is really those notes and photos and voice memos for my daughters.
And I think I asked you this before. Have you listened to those at all, like back? Have you
Uh,
gone
I,
back and like, a year ago, like I posted
I
this one
haven't.
thing. It's interesting.
I haven't because I think it would influence the raw nature of it. We
Yeah.
talked
Okay.
about before we jumped on the show here. We had a great conversation even before we jumped on the show. But I talked about um, rehearsal and raw, and like when we were starting the Fuel Hunt show, I felt a crushing pressure to rehearse so that every 10 seconds I said something quotable that was going to add value to somebody's life because they were exchanging their time, right, to listen to me. And what that did was it created a rehearsed environment. But what really moves people, what really changes people's lives are raw, real stories of real failures, real successes, real people doing real hard work for real impact. So
Yeah.
I don't, there may have been some that I went back to just to make sure that I listened. So I got all the details right because
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
important, like, you're losing your first tooth or something. But
Yeah.
I don't believe I've went back and listened to many. No,
Yeah. Yeah.
I want them to, they will be of the level of awareness when they get to that age, God willing. I'm trying to impart that in them. I want them to see my evolution, my natural, my raw evolution.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, yeah. No, I'm not. I want them when they log in to see a bunch of unread messages, unplayed memos,
Yeah.
unviewed pictures. This is special to them. It's a gift to them. Nobody's ever been there before. It's
That's awesome.
like exploring Mars or
Yeah.
wherever.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm saying. Yeah.
So with that, you look at your growth, and obviously we're growing every day, right? And that's
Mm-hmm.
it's one of the mantras at Fuel Hunt. You've got to be growing,
Mm-hmm.
or you're dying. I mean,
Yep.
actually, you're dying anyway, so you might as well just grow, right?
Exactly. Yep. Yep.
Um, man, I go back. My oldest just turned 13, so we have officially a teenager in the house. But it is the weirdest feeling. I wrote some stuff down, and I kind of did an inventory
Mm-hmm.
of me within the last year. And really, the inventory, I say the word math very cautiously because I am not the math guy, right? But I'm like, all right, let's inventory these thought processes and these things that I've tracked from a year ago
Sure.
with the equal sign at the end and saying, am I better for her than I was a year ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
One thing I found that is difficult is to do that for the entire year because we do tend to do that. New Year's resolutions, people do this all the time, right? Like, oh, I'm
Yep.
gonna wait a whole year to put a New Year's resolution, right?
Yeah.
And so I was doing that inventory, and this just happened in the beginning of March.
Sure.
So I'm looking at this, and I'm like, oh man, I think I'm looking through all the inventory, and I keep saying, I think I've gotten better. Like I
Mm-hmm.
think I've done this better or that better. But then it just dawned on me that my growth is not being tracked more substantially than what I just did, right? So a whole year, just like anything else, is hard to track every little
Yeah.
thing.
You're gonna forget things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you're going to typically, And I can't quote the study, but you're typically going to forget most of the good stuff you did, and you're going
Yes.
to remember the
Negative.
average and the negative
The
things, or
negative.
you're going to, which is how we're wired.
Yeah.
That's how we survive and we get better. But to dial in that gratitude and have imagination and
Yeah.
faith in the future, you need to remember the good stuff too. So,
It's funny you say that because I was joking around with my wife. I'm like, hey, I should just make like a review process for my daughters, right? But what happens when you look at reviews?
yeah.
How often do you get a positive review,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? How often does someone sit there
Well,
and write out this whole thing because they had such a positive experience? 99% of the time when you read a review is because someone had
they're
a negative
critical.
experience,
Yeah, they're
right?
critical. Yeah, the other thing too that you have to add when you're thinking about us as men, as fathers, and as leaders, high performers like we are, me and you, right? If I asked you to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best,
Yeah,
after you did some amazing things,
yeah,
you had a streak in your life where you were just amazing. You're the type of guy, and I'm the type of guy. I'd be like 3.5.
yeah,
Like that's the mark I give. I could have just done something amazing,
yeah,
and I would never give myself a 5 because we are hard chargers. We like to do hard things. We enjoy
yeah.
pain a little bit. So, it's tough. It's tough to do. I have my own system, and I love what you're doing, like audit and assess. Yeah.
Well, that thought process that I mentioned to you before, right? Like my wife will check me on some of those sometimes.
Oh yeah.
Be like, no, stop. You were doing this and you were doing this and you've done this. I'm like, oh, I didn't think of any of that, right?
Yeah.
And it would be interesting to get Mrs. Bowen on here and
Yeah.
start talking the same conversation because odds are she's going to throw some positive bombs at you and be like, I didn't even remember that.
Yeah.
Or maybe even if you do remember it, and this is what I do, you give it, like you mentioned, less of a grade, right? Like, I
3.
mean, yeah, but that's just
That's
my
right.
job, right?
Yeah.
That's,
Exactly.
like, that's exactly what it is. Like, it's just my job.
Yep. It's my duty. My wife knows me very well, and she knows what makes me tick. So I get much more critique from her than I do praise, and I'm grateful for that. As a man, you want to be um, really respected and admired. I believe those are 2 things that men really want. Uh, so, are there some times where I'm just like, yeah, a little admiration would be great, but she knows me well. She knows what makes me tick and what drives me and what drives me to do great things.
Right.
So she'll check me with a little bit of critique every
That's
once in a
good.
while when I need it. Yeah,
Maybe light the fire a little bit sometimes.
exactly. Stoking it,
Yeah,
stoking the
that's
fire.
right.
Yeah.
Stoking the fire. That's good. So with that thought process in mind, let's just say between the last year of your daughter's lives, right? So you got one
Mm-hmm.
going on 9 here soon.
Yep.
And man, that's crazy. Like you start thinking about that.
Yeah.
What in that year to now would you say has been the most surprising thing,
Mm-hmm.
and also the hardest thing? So one
Yep.
surprising thing in the last year that I don't know why I always find myself getting surprised by my daughters. Like my 4 year old just will do things. I'm just like, whoa, you're 4. Like, what are you doing? Or who taught you that?
Sure.
Uh, but with that thought process of these continuous checks on yourself, right? And I'm not saying surprising
Yep.
from your daughter specifically, but maybe from you.
Yeah. From my perspective, you're
Yeah,
saying,
from your
right?
perspective.
Like what I've been surprised with. So, in the past year, so you know me well enough. You know that I have a background as a programmer, and I think
Mhm.
maybe I don't know if we spoke about that on the show last time, but I used to build software, and when you
Yeah,
build
right.
software, you use frameworks. So I'm big on mental frameworks, taking the complex mentalities that drive you forward in life and like distilling them down so that they're simple to understand and um, easier to apply to your
Okay.
life. So in the past year, I've really sat down and I'm like, look, what's like a little framework that I can give my daughters that they can understand on a daily basis that will really serve them in life?
Okay.
And of course, I've already come up with some of them for them, but in the past year, I came up with one that's really serving them and has actually resulted in some surprises.
Okay.
So it was one day during a daddy daughter day. My daughter asked a question about why it was so important to eat protein. Because I know it sounds crazy, but I went through like macros with them so that they
Okay.
understand that. And believe me, like we eat pancakes, like chocolate chip pancakes and chocolate chip waffles, like we eat a ton of them. But it's important for them to understand, what those are made of, and when you eat them, how they make you feel,
Right.
and when they're useful and when they're not. Like otherwise, they're going to be eating a stack of pancakes every day.
For sure.
So,
Yeah.
so my daughter was like, why is it so important to eat protein? So I'm like, that spurred a conversation about when you go through your day, the decisions you make and the actions you take should grow two things: your mind and your muscles.
Okay.
So pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like better mind, stronger muscles, like every day. So this mind and this muscles thing
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
a framework that we've been like working throughout the year. So they understand if they do their Kumon, their mind gets stronger.
Okay.
They understand if they do great at swim and they empty the tank in the pool, their muscles get stronger.
Right.
Then I make the correlation and I'm like, your mind gets stronger too. And they're
Yeah.
like, and then I'm like, when your mind gets stronger, it fuels the ability for your muscles to get stronger. And I make the correlation and they're just like, you know? So what I've seen happen in the past year that's been surprising is my youngest has always been more physical,
Okay.
like more gifted with physicality when it comes to like dance, sports, strength, like all that stuff. And my oldest has been more gifted when it comes to mentality, the
Okay.
mind, the smarts, being sharp, being analytical, being deep. Like she's already an old soul at 8, which is crazy. Because it took me a little, like, I was an old soul early, but now I don't think so at 8. I mean, I asked
Yeah.
my
Right.
mom, but maybe my mom would say yes. But so, in the past year, I've been surprised to see that start to switch. And
Ah.
my oldest is now like much more like body aware and becoming much more physical
Yeah.
and like better at softball with coordination and things like that. And she's using her mind to fuel that growth.
Mm.
And my youngest, who was kind of like just like a savage, would wrestle anything that moved. Like if she could get like a hold of a squirrel at the playground, like she would wrestle it. Like
That's funny.
her mentality is starting to become just as strong as her physicality,
Mm.
where I'm starting to see her now excel at like math in Kumon and in school and things like that. So what I've been surprised with over the past year is how quickly they've flipped the stereotype that they had or the type that
Right.
they've
Right.
been casted with on its head. They flipped the script because you know how it is. Humans want to put things in categories. You're a planner, I'm a planner, we're
Right.
tactical. Humans want to put things in categories and boxes so that we can understand them and we can impart the illusion of control
Right.
over
Absolutely.
things,
Yeah.
right? You know
I
what I
like
mean?
that. The illusion of control is key. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't control your life. You can't master your life. You can master yourself. You can't master your life, though. You can't control your life. You can control
Right.
yourself. But as humans, that's what we try to do. And that actually bleeds onto people, especially like our daughters sometimes. We're
Yeah.
like, okay, well, Everly's always going to be super smart and like sports aren't her thing. Cecilia is going to be really great at sports. She's going to be a
Right.
D1 athlete. And, that then school will be a backseat. Like she'll figure that out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you start to type your children.
Yeah. You sure do. Yeah.
And in the past year, I've been surprised at how quickly and I say easily, in air quotes, they flipped the script on that. So a little bit of a long answer with some background to it, but I
Yeah.
wanted
Yeah.
you to understand the backstory behind the surprise there.
That's great. I mean, as you mentioned that, it reminds me of categorizing, right?
Yeah.
One thing that we tend to do also is in that mode of categorizing your kid or like boxing them because you're like, oh, they're really good at like young and can pick up things and likes to move around. It's like that's gonna be my athlete, right?
Yep.
One other thing with that is that we start categorizing them into not necessarily a personality, but a person. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll hear folks say like, "Oh, baby, you're just like me," and then you start saying these things,
Yes.
and
Yes.
that's not always good, right?
No, no, it's not.
Because you almost take the autonomy away from that
Yes.
child, from our daughter, and give them for lack of better terms, you give them an excuse.
Yes.
Oh, I do this because I'm just like my daddy.
Yeah.
Well, baby, I didn't mean for you to take that in a positive thing. I found, my wife and I were talking about this. I found that it's because we're trying to almost help them not feel bad about something they're doing. Oh,
Sure.
it's also happened to me. I kind of did this, and so you start boxing them. But then what I noticed, particularly with my oldest, is like she may use as an excuse. Oh, well, it's because I'm like mommy. Well, wait a minute.
Yes.
That's not what she was trying to tell you.
This is where the growth thing comes from. Like we
Yes.
started off the conversation by saying one of the rules of the few is die growing, right? Growth to the grave.
Right.
Man, it's like anything. Life is full of dichotomies. Life is so beautiful. It's full of dichotomies. To a degree, you should say, hey, you do that because that's what I do, or that's what I did. You
Right.
learned that from me. That's in your DNA.
Yeah.
But now look at me. I do something different.
Right.
So that's not the way that you have to be or will be. That's just the way you are right now because you're learning and you're growing.
Right.
You can't regulate your emotions sometimes because sometimes I can't. But look at me now. I'm doing a good job of regulating my emotions because I've learned and I've grown, and you will too.
Yeah.
Like it's such a balance because you almost have to say, hey, you're doing that because I did it. Like you got that from me. Like
Right.
hands down, like
Yep.
we know where that came from. But then you have to immediately have the conversation with them to say, but I'm working on it. That's
Yeah.
why I made this different decision yesterday when this happened.
Right.
Or that's why I haven't, drank alcohol in a year. You need to show them that growth so that they don't see themselves as fixed entities.
Right. Exactly.
That's where it really, if you zoom all the way out, bro, like if you see Tarsdale Ave behind me,
Yeah.
picture me
Yeah.
standing all the way out there. You zoom all the way out. This is the growth in the fixed mindset.
Yeah.
If you say to your daughter, you do that because I did it, and you don't provide any other context or growth, you slowly start fixing their mindset instead of having them open up to have
Yeah.
a growth mindset. Yeah. Yeah. It's so
Absolutely.
wild. This is such a great conversation.
Yeah. I think I got that when I was a kid, but
Mm-hmm.
it was not in a negative manner, but it wasn't inducive to growth. It was like,
Yep.
oh, your dad's like that.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's like there was no follow on to that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just the nature of growing up in different times.
Yep.
And it's funny too because my wife and I will do that to
Yeah.
ourselves. We'll be like, "That's all you right there. Like, whatever
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
is, that's you." And I feel like it's okay as we're doing it because it's banter or it's just us kind of relating to what
Yeah.
the situation is. But then I also feel like if we do that to my girls, like I don't want to put them in that box
Yeah.
because you're right. And the follow on is the important thing is yes, listen, that's probably nature versus nurture there, but we can
Yeah.
then nurture that out of the way. Let's do this instead.
Yeah. Exactly.
And
Yeah.
so that's the key, I think, within that concept that you're talking about.
Yeah, it's information and outformation, man. You got to give
Yes,
them
yeah,
the information. Like, hey, look, you're doing that because that's me. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like that's in your like helix, like it's in your DNA.
yeah,
But that's the information you need uh, to know why you're doing it. But now you got to get the outformation, which is
yeah,
thinking
yeah,
outside the box and opening up your mind to growth. And they're not going to want to grow and do what you say
right,
unless you're doing it by example, unless you're doing it and you have an example of it that you can show them. And that inevitably is you admitting sometimes that you're wrong to them. And that is super important, man.
right,
Like my oldest has a little bit of a thing, man. Like I like to, I can't say I like to be right because I really don't. But I have high standards. And
yeah,
sometimes when you have high standards, perfectionism leaks in. And she's picked that up. And
right,
early on in her life, I didn't do a good enough job of explaining that it wasn't perfection. It was just a high standard. You
hmm,
know what I'm saying? And meeting high standards requires mistakes and things like that. So sometimes she's like a little too like perfect.
mm,
Everything's got to be the perfect way or this, that, the other thing. And I've had to go to her and be like, hey, look, I was wrong. I did not explain to you well enough that perfection doesn't exist. And what matters is progress. And I had a high standard for you at a young age, which was kind of unfair to a
Right.
degree. And now she gets it. Some of the most moving moments that one in particular she had with her friend. She came home from school one day and she was like, "Oh, hey, like I was at aftercare and we were drawing because I don't do in the Bowen household and the Bowen sphere, in the world, we don't do screens. No
Okay.
iPhones, no iPads, none of that shit. Tuesday, Thursday, they watch TV. They begin with T, their TV days. That's the way we run it. So at aftercare, they're drawing. And one of her friends was trying to make the picture perfect that she was drawing. And she kept crumbling up the paper and tossing it. Oh, it's not perfect. It's not perfect. It's not perfect. And Everly, which is crazy, dude, she was like, hey, like, perfect doesn't exist. She imparted like wisdom to her friend. And I was like, that is wild,
Yeah.
But it was proof to me that she was listening. So what came from that wasn't a proud moment for me being like, oh, my daughter's listening to what I said, like my ego. It was more so proof that what I'm doing with her, I should keep doing because it's going to help her create a bright future, not just for herself, but for the people that surround
Right.
her.
Well, it's about imitation because that's what they're doing. They're going to
Yeah.
imitate. As much as we like to say words, that's just, it doesn't.
Nah.
That's the biggest thing I've learned. It's like that words don't matter.
Yeah,
And imitation.
caught, not taught, man.
And for me, it comes to full circle when I'll see my oldest like snap at her younger sisters, like in a certain way, like a tone.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's me. That was me with her, and that's the imitation. And so we've been working on those things where, just like you mentioned, I'll sit her off to the side, like, baby, listen, I did not do these things correctly. My tone with you wasn't correct. Think about your sisters. And, not that it's much different with other people, but I always tell her, we don't have family around us. Like, I grew up around all my cousins. She doesn't have that, right? So I'm like, these two people, these two little people beside you will be your best friend forever and ever. And the moment you start treating them badly, you're going to lose them. And so it's so important for me to remind her of that, but then also to take her back and say, hey, listen, when I told you that, and I try to do exactly what you said, is now because she's 13 and I can kind of rationalize some of these things. I say, the other day when I talked to you this way, I was wrong about that because I've caught myself not fixing those things right away until then I see them in her and I'm like, oh, that was just me.
That happens. That happens to me too. Yeah. What matters is, and you know this, and this is what I tell myself, what matters is that we go back and we apologize and we address and we make it right. Because when you're, like I said before, when you're hard charging like we are, when you're high performers, there's a certain amount of fixing that just doesn't get done in the moment, and you got to make sure that you have that like capital build up in their bank account where you can sit down and have that conversation with them. Because if you go too long without being vulnerable and without admitting that you're wrong, you're not building up that capital in that bank account, and they ain't going to listen when you try to rewind and fix. So It's important, man. I'm proud of you for that, man. Yeah, I'm proud of you for that.
Yeah, and it's that gap that you talked about before, right? It's important probably in this moment of conversation that this podcast, what we've talked about before, it's not a pedestal that we step on, right?
Yeah.
It's essentially pushing information from the bottom of the pedestal. The way I look at it is pushing information up from my mistakes, because the gap that you talked about before, that gap of where I am right here to where I want to be as the father of my daughters and the example that I want, that gap, that's where I live, right? Yeah. I am imperfect. I am constantly checking myself. I am constantly apologizing to my daughters, my wife, like, because there's just this major gap. Call it what you will. Call it nature versus nurture as I was growing up. Like all these different things, but the gap is there.
Yeah.
And we have to fill the gap with, I'm not a guru, right? Like positivity thing, it's not my thing, but we have to fill it with intentionality. That's what I think we have to do.
It's that gap, like depending on who I'm speaking to, if I'm speaking to athletes or high performers, or I'm speaking to dads, the gap is still there. The gap has different names. Like it might be the performance gap, it might be the parenting gap, but the gap is there, and it's the gap between knowing and doing. And I know better, but I don't always do better. And that's one of the main messages that I give my daughters
Mm.
because I want them to understand that. Because sometimes, even though you know better and you don't do better, you start to think that something is wrong with you,
Yeah, right.
that
Yeah,
you're deficient, you're broken, you're this, you're that. When in reality, it's just the human condition, bro.
right,
That's all it is. And I'm with you. I love the analogy of pushing the information up. Bro, I am not on the pedestal. I'm in the dirt. Like I'm in the trench,
right,
right? And I see we had you said the dude, we had that conversation when you first opened up where I was saying like, dude, I'm a regular guy. Like I'm a regular dude,
right,
right? I actually believe that I'm in the trench. I am super regular. And most people actually do better than I do. And they're not in the trench with me. They're actually walking on the ground
right,
above the trench. And I'm in the trench and I'm putting that work in, right? I'm putting that work in, I'm putting that work in. And I'm picking away with the pickaxe. And every time I find a gem, I take the gem
throw
and
it
I
over.
heave and I throw it over, man.
Yeah,
I heave ho it out of the trench onto the ground so that somebody can pick it up that's walking by and they can say, man, that makes sense. That
right,
kept me, that helped me be where my feet were so I didn't forget and walk into the trench with that guy. Like that's the way I see
yeah.
it. And I know that some people, may not think it's that way with some of the things that I achieve, but that's kind of like my secret sauce to success. You know what I mean? People are like, "Be where your feet are." I'm like, mine are in the trenches,
Yeah,
bro.
right,
Like mine are like 6 feet below where everybody else's are.
right.
And I'm just trying to find them gems and just heave them up to everybody else.
Well, we're on the same trench, brother, because that's exactly what we're trying to
Yeah,
do, right? Throw
yeah,
those gyms up, and someone can grab them before they fall into the trench, then that's
yeah,
probably a good thing. But
for
by all
sure.
means, come on in the trench. It's nice and warm and
Yeah,
dirty. Trust me.
it's fun here. It really is.
Yeah, right,
No, it is. You know what it is? We were talking about service, and the trenches. That's where the service happens.
right,
And I'm not saying that there aren't people walking the earth that aren't in the trenches, just walking on the fertile ground, that aren't doing wonderful acts of service for people.
right.
There are, but I believe that the most impactful servants in any industry, in any community, in any creed, they are in the trenches or once were in the
Yeah.
trenches.
And to be fair, I mean, everybody has a different trench, right? Everybody's in a different level of trench or a different
Yep.
depth of a trench,
Yep.
depending on what you're doing. So I think it's important to also realize that because you're saying, well, people are walking above the trench, but maybe that's their trench
Yeah,
because,
exactly.
not
Yeah.
everybody can take the lower trench. And it brings to mind the process of continuously growing. When I think of a trench, I think of the dirt and getting out of that dirt literally in my brain, my what do they call it? My mind's eye just looks like a plant growing out, right? Like I'm trying to grow out of that. And the biggest thing that I try to impart to my daughters is that it's like, hey, listen, if I could come home, like when you talk about Bedros talking about the armor falling off,
Yeah.
like when I come home, if my armor fell off, you would just see me dirty, right? Like I just
Yeah.
left a coal mine. Like that's what I
Yep.
look like to myself because I'm
Yeah.
constantly trying to figure this out. And
Yep.
so I even try to bring it into full reality. Like when my daughters would be like, I'm dirty. I'm like, dirty's good. Like it's
Yes.
okay. Like that means you're doing something,
Yep.
right? Whether it's playing, you're growing, you're learning, you're doing these different things. Dirty is not necessarily a bad thing,
No, no, not
right?
at all. Not
And
at all.
so the visualization of being in a trench, and we always talk about that, like at least me and some folks that I work with, because you don't always get the job you want, or you don't always get the location that you wanted. Like all these different things happen. It's like this is my foxhole right now. This is where I fight out of because that's where whether
That's
it's
true.
military or whatever, but also things happen for a reason. So this is where
Yep.
I'm fighting out of right here.
Yep.
And so the foxhole analogy is the same. It's I'm in a hole and I've got to fight out of that. And that's important because as you had mentioned before, you want to be that advisor for your daughters. What better way than to be in that trench? Because you're
It's
hoping to
the
throw those gems to them,
it's the only way.
right?
It's the only way. Yeah.
Have you ever heard of the 777 rule of parenting? It,
No.
so there's all these different ones,
Sounds
right?
like something, it's a framework, so it sounds
Yeah,
like something that I'd be interested in.
it does. It also sounds like someone's trying to sell you something, at least the way I look at it, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But really, it's just philosophy of parenting, right? So
yeah.
the first 7 years you play, the next 7 years you teach, and then the next 7 years and beyond you advise and guide.
Okay, I like that.
And as we start to move out of that trench mentality, you're talking about how you thought about being an advisor for your daughters. And
Yes.
it's interesting because you had mentioned that you were an old soul early on,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so you
Yep.
almost fast tracked that play, teach, guide. I feel like a little early, especially with your oldest, because we
Yes,
talked about
I
how
did.
we do that with our oldest, because we're trying to just like
We're full.
top vomit everything. Like this is
We're,
so important. Everything's so important.
yeah, yeah.
What do you think? What do you think of that?
I like that a lot, and I started as you were saying it. I have this like uncanny ability of actively listening, and then at the same time also like being very analytical. So
Okay.
as you were painting it, I started to really analyze like my first 7 years, and then my
Yeah.
next 7 years, and how that paralleled to my oldest daughter specifically, her
Yeah.
first 7 years, and now her next 7 years. And I was like, wow, this actually makes like a whole lot of sense.
Right.
The age of enlightenment is 7 years old.
Okay.
So it makes sense that you would want to play or be creative for the first 7 years to really build imagination and faith, and then teach for the next 7 years because you're already very radiant from those
Yeah.
first 7 years. The teaching won't dim that radiance.
Right.
And then that combination, it's really what I talk about all the time. I believe that life is a summation. Your life is a summation of two things,
Yeah.
right? It's your belief and your work, or your belief system and your work ethic.
Mm-hmm.
And your belief system is your imagination, your faith, you know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
then your work ethic is your habits and your lessons and things like that. So there's a crazy amount of parallels. Is that in a book that you've read,
No,
or
it probably is. It probably is. I did this research thing a few months ago, and
yeah,
it came up about parenting, and it's just like one of different philosophies, as you can
yeah,
imagine. Everybody's got them, but even if you just Google 777 parenting, just like
yeah,
that, it'll come up.
I want to check
Um,
that out. I had a friend, one of the few, and a friend on the Fuel Hunt show recently, Kurt,
mm,
and he was talking about being an old soul.
yeah,
And I always talk about being an old soul. And looking at this, I'm wondering if really what births an old soul is really that first 7 years, like not enough playtime,
that's
man.
right. Yeah.
Is that what the studies basically say?
I don't know that I got that deep into it, but for me, that's what it triggered because I started to look at, just like you said, as I started to do the research, I was like, damn, I don't think I did 7 years of play with my oldest. I was like, go,
Yeah.
go, 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 go with her. And not
Well,
to mention, I was always gone.
yeah.
I don't know. I don't think I was as present as I wish I had been with her. I know we're always going to think that with all of
Yeah.
our kids. Um, but it really came into play. And then I thought, like, all right, so how did I do with my middle child? And then I can see those first 7 years, like, I did better there. And then my
Right.
last one, dude, she was a COVID baby. So I was home. I
Yeah.
was home and we were always together. And even now, it's so much different. And I know we talked about how our oldest inevitably is in our service of teaching us, which sucks for them.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, like, it's 100% different with the little one because
Oh, of
I've
course.
learned all these little things, and that's where my brain goes. So I'm like, first 7 years, play, and I think one of the descriptions of the first 7 years is play and love, like just like
Mm.
it's probably a little controversial because I think it mentions like don't correct, like don't do just be
Yeah.
like their play person,
There's a balance, man, with
right,
everything. You know what
right,
I mean? Yeah, there's balance to everything. What's interesting is, man, you are literally making me wiser on this show because you are you I was going to say forcing me into a place, but you are guiding me into a place to not only think about that 777 with my daughters, but in my own life. And I will tell you, for the first 14 years of my life, uh, there were a lot of lessons.
yeah,
There was a lot of teaching. Um, there, it wasn't. There was a ton of love. Don't get me wrong,
Right.
but it wasn't happy-go-lucky
Yeah.
fun
Yeah.
time, playtime, man. It was hard lessons, teaching, getting my ass kicked on the street, you know what I mean? Philly, getting my confidence kicked in by certain things going on in my life with
Right.
my family. And I wonder if that's what really births the old soul.
The old soul. Yeah.
Man, you really hit on something here and you're making me wiser, man. I appreciate that. I
Yeah,
mean,
man.
I appreciate the opportunity to be here, but like, I'm going to leave here with one of the most important things that you can ever gain in life, and that's clarity. Clarity.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, man. Thank you.
Man, that's just me looking at things, trying to be better every
Yeah.
day, and finding different things.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that needs to be at least mentioned is context, right? Because we know that, bro, like your 7 years and my 7 years look different than some
Yes.
third world country seven
Oh, of
years for
course. Of
7 years,
course.
right? Necessity and Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like all those things come into play. We have this privilege of living where we live and
Sure.
having security that we have. So that's something important to point out, having been in different countries, seeing different contexts.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the word, but I'll take that. Anyway,
Yeah. No, I get it. We get it.
but yeah, it's critical to think through that, because if that is the case, and I know that there's certain scholars that go by that 777 rule, and I'm sure when you look at it, you'll see
Yeah.
all the data. It starts to also make sense for me as well as I grow up. Right, I was trying to find jobs early, not obviously not at 7, but just gives
Yeah.
you the context of like how we were raised. And in fact, I spent my first 7 years in Mexico, where I was born, before even coming here. And how does that change things, and
Yeah.
the struggles of family, like you mentioned, that has a huge play in there.
Oh, of
And,
course.
and the privilege and fortune that I think we have is that clarity now, to be able to look through this and say, how do I now affect the future of my daughters,
Yes.
um, through these thought processes, which is why the Daughter Podcast is here, which is
Yep.
why, as far as I'm concerned, which is why Fuel Hunt is here, because we
Yep.
want to be present, but also make a change towards the future, whether it's with your kids, with your family, with your friends, whatever that is. So
Yep.
that's something that
Absolutely.
really stuck with me as I was kind of going through that. And again, to your point, starts to make you analyze
Yes.
you,
Yep.
because the biggest thing we can do is analyze us so that we can impart better to our daughters.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's scary, and that's why few people do it. Analyzing yourself is scary because that
It
means
is.
you have to take ownership. But when you analyze yourself, you become more self-aware, and self-aware is the seed. Everything sprouts from that. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Your thoughts, your choices, your actions, and ultimately your life and the lives of those that you're responsible for, you to provide
Absolutely.
and protect. So yeah, for sure, man. I'm like going through this, like then you can get into the number 7 and the meaning and the power that that has had throughout centuries and stuff like that. Like I'm
Interesting.
going to go, listen, after this, I'm going to jujitsu. I do 3 things, right? Fuel hunt, family, and jujitsu, right?
Yep.
After this, I'm going to go to jujitsu. And then after jujitsu, I'm going back home. My girls will be home, right?
Okay.
So I'm going to spend some time with them. But tonight, bro, I just want to let you know that
Rabbit hole.
I will be laying in bed and I will be going into the deepest recesses of my mind on this 777 thing, bro. So when you start to see some content pop up on my personal page,
Get it.
or Fuel Hunt's page, probably my personal first, please know that you inspired it, brother, because
Get it.
it's gonna be coming. Yeah, it's gonna be coming.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Give you some rabbit holes. Or you might just come back and be like, I hate you now. I
this
can't.
is this is literally what I live for, man. Like connecting with people, specifically the few, connecting with people on deep levels
Yeah.
that cause 2 things to happen. Expose deep meaning, right? And then expose deep change. Like
Yeah.
that's what I love, dude. That's what I love. And you said something very important. Bro, I am from the civilian sector, right? I was born here, you know what I'm saying? To a middle class family.
Right.
Did I have familial struggles? Did we have money struggles? Did we have all that stuff? Yeah. You know what I mean? Did I get beat up? Did I get it? Did things happen? They did, right? But that does not compare to your lived experience
Right.
of the 7 years you spent in Mexico and immigrating here, and then that whole thing. of finding your place here in a whole nother world, right?
Yep.
Compared to
Yep.
where you were born. I think a lot of the times as people, we get caught up in comparing those
Oh yeah.
things. Well, bro, you couldn't understand me because you didn't grow up in Mexico and have to immigrate here and go through everything I went through. You know what I mean? We get caught in comparing those things, and that inevitably weakens us.
100%.
It disables the ability that we have to connect on first principles. Struggle, stress, pain, progress, all of those things. We are more alike than we are different,
Oh yeah.
as long as we choose to connect with each other on that primal level, those first principles: hard work, freedom, service to others. So that's why you don't see a bunch of like, and we don't even have to go into this, but you don't see a lot of like political content, social
Yeah.
content come from me. And it's not because I don't have beliefs when it comes to those things.
Yeah.
What I believe is that if we connect on the first principles of hard work, freedom, service to others, we will make far more progress than us trying to connect on those other things.
Absolutely.
And that's something, very, very, very important. And I'm glad that you brought it up.
Yeah, it's a much more solid identity than getting a political identity, than getting, I mean, all these different things. Like,
Yeah.
sorry, man, that's not my identity. Like, my
Yeah. Yeah.
identity is this, is growing, is
Yep.
being a good father for my daughters, like being the example, not only for my daughters, but the people around me. That's the
Yeah.
identity.
Yeah. If you zoom out, man, like everybody, and I spoke about this at BK Live, man, everybody really wants three things. They want to belong, they want to have meaning, specifically make meaning, right? And they want to create an identity.
Right.
And sometimes what happens is we get real caught up on the identity thing and we battle each other on the identity because my identity wasn't your identity, doesn't jive with your identity, blah, blah, blah. But guess what? When we start to zoom out, when it comes to making meaning in our lives, we all want the same thing, bro. We want security,
Yeah.
right? We want the freedom to be who we are. We want to protect and provide for the people that we love.
Yeah.
And then if we continue to zoom out further, we want to belong, right? Regardless of anything that happened to us or people made us feel a certain way or put us in a certain box,
Yeah.
we just want to belong. And if we look at the belonging and the meaning sometimes at that level, then we actually connect and we can change the world for the better.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Fuel Hunt has done an amazing job with that, because I think belonging in that community of folks that are working towards those exact things, you're changing the world just right there within that community. And I think it's a very strong and powerful thing that is happening.
Yeah. Thank you, brother.
And along those lines, if your daughter, you belong in this club of dudes in a trench trying to figure out where the gems are so we can throw them up to the daughters and to figure it and to help them. And I know I keep saying dudes and fathers because obviously I don't speak for my wife and mothers, but if you're daughter, right? And not that having sons is any easier or whatever. It's different, but that's not my forte. So that this is what I'm cooking with, right?
There's a thing, and Bedros, when I met him, we became friends and then eventually partners. He brought this phrase into my life, and it's zone of genius. And sometimes I say it, and people are like, "Oh, that's presumptuous. You have a zone of genius." And
Ooh,
I'm like,
fancy.
Yeah, or oh, you must be really smart. No, everybody has their zone of genius, and really, what it is it is the area of life or living that your radiance naturally just gravitates to and illuminates, right? And this is your zone of genius. So stay in it.
Genius part, but it's a zone for sure.
Well, that's what I'm talking about.
I'll stay in the zone.
You got to stay in your zone of genius. And if you do it correctly, again, you boil it down to first principles that really everybody can relate to.
Absolutely.
And when you do that, those that are daughtered, that are listening, they take those core principles, those core ideas, those gems, and they can serve someone else in their life that's going through a bad breakup, the office or something. You know what I mean? So there's ripple effects. So keep doing what you're doing, man. You're doing a great job.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate you.
Yeah.
And for you guys out there, you can find Joey everywhere. Literally type in Joey Bowen. You can find him all the podcasts. This dude is literally everywhere. I don't know how he does it all, but we'll have his links to Fuel Hunt to Instagram, Joey Digital, on our website. Also in the show notes, I'll put those in there. And ultimately, Joey, I want to thank you for, again, coming on here and sharing the space with me and getting into these, I call them weird topics, because again, I'm still in awe that I'm daughtered 3 times, right? Yeah. So I that's why I call them weird topics. But thank you so much for coming on. Yeah. Do you have anything else for everybody out there, all the daughter community, that you'd like to put out?
Not specifically. I want to touch on something you just said, if I may.
Yeah, absolutely.
You said weird topics, right? And I want to reframe that, because you reframed it immediately after. And you said a word that does not get used often and needs to be used much more. And that was all. As in my Philly accent, it probably sounds like I said all, but all, A-W-E, all. I don't believe, with the way that the world moves right now, it's inherently can be negative and it moves very quickly. There is a lack of awe in the world. What you're describing isn't weird. It's a moment of enlightenment. Yeah. It's when we can come together and we can realize that we are a very small part of a much bigger system, but we still can play a big role in that system. Yeah. And that puts us in a feeling of awe. We're inspired that we can do more, be more, give more. So that's my closing thought. Let's keep using the word awe and give more, do more, be more for our daughters.
I like that, Joey. Thank you very much. That's actually a much better word than weird, because weird just comes off weird. So
I just did a show with our friend Craig Ballantyne, and Drew was speaking and he used a word, and Craig stopped us in the show and he was like, "Hey, can I reframe that? And can we work through this?" And it really inspired me to listen more actively to the language that I'm using, right, and the language we're using. We're on the show. So shout out to Craig, a friend, also a mentor of mine, for planting that seed in my mind yesterday that helped me have that moment with you and the daughter community.
Words matter. Words matter to 100%. Everything that we're doing, and they ultimately drive that action. Well, to everyone out there, remember that mindset. How can I be strong for my daughters? How can I be mindful? And how can I be present with my daughters at all times? Until next time, with Joey in Philly, I will see you all later. Thanks, Joey, again. And we'll catch you on our next episode.
Thank you, brother. Can't wait to do it again.
Hey, thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed that episode. If you want more of the Daughter Podcast, please go to www.daughterpodcast.com. There, you will be able to find the podcast in all the platforms. You'll also be able to chat with us, send us your thoughts, and shout out a dad that is killing it and someone we can learn from. Share their story and why they deserve recognition. And I would love to shout them out during the show in one of our episodes as the season goes on. Additionally, you will be able to find all of our social media information in the webpage, from our Instagram, Facebook, and also our YouTube. And any other news that comes up, we will be putting it on the site. You could also find the daddy-daughter date night guide that we have created, and hopefully that'll help you to create those lasting memories with your daughter. Thank you all for your constant support and for listening and watching the Daughter Podcast.